As we've established, some in the theater community, formerly known as Off-Broadway, have felt the need to define what they do as somehow different from other forms of theater that might have been occurring in earlier eras. Why? What's changed in the landscape? We're very fortunate to have with us three pivotal figures in the shift that's been going on for the last several years. Here in the studio with us we have Ellie Covan, founder and artistic director of Dixon Place. Elena K. co-founder and producing artistic director of The Present Company, which creates and produces the New York International Fringe Festival, whose name is actually pronounced Elena. And John Clancy, co-founder and former co-artistic director of the New York International Fringe Festival, former artistic director of The Present Company, current artistic director of Clancy Productions, and current executive director of the League of Independent Theaters. I'm all out of breath.
It's also pronounced Elena.
That's what the H is for, right, in John. So anyway, Ellie, I thought we'd start with you, because you founded Dixon Place in '86, correct?
That's right.
When I first moved to the city, we used to go to an apartment in the Lower East Side full of kitchen chairs and see people like Ethel Eichelberger and other amazing performers. And that was your house, wasn't it?
Yes, in fact it was.
Can you tell us a little bit about the origin of Dixon Place? And you have this wonderful logo now, kitchen chairs.
Well, they're not just kitchen chairs. It's a variety of chairs.
Well, what other sorts of chairs are we talking about?
Well, there's like a living room chair and a dining room chair. And
do they symbolize anything for you, or?
Just chairs.
Okay. But why start a theater in your apartment?
Well, it's really affordable to do that. You know, the overhead, you can really keep your overhead down. And I started it actually in '85 when I was spending the summer in Paris. And I had this incredible apartment that someone loaned me, and it just sort of happened by accident. It wasn't planned. It was just a total spontaneous thing that happened, and it became Tuesday nights at Dixon Place. And when I moved back to New York, a friend of mine told me about a storefront next to his, and I said, gee, I've always wanted to live in a storefront in the East Village. That sounds like so much fun. What will I do in there? And we said, well, we'll share the garden, you know, so I started having just, you know, sort of soirees, and there was an art opening, and then I started doing Tuesday nights at Dixon Place like I did at Paris, and the first presentations were literary events, poetry and fiction on Tuesday nights, and then it grew from there, and then we added Friday and Saturday, and we would have a performance artist, and then an intermission, and then a band. Usually we kind of had that format for a while. And after about, I don't know, 4 or 5 months, it was 5 nights a week. And I really just intended to do it as I had retired from the stage myself.
You were an actress?
I was,
yeah,
at one time. And I was retired from the stage, and so I decided I wanted to contribute in a different way to the world of the performing arts. And so it just really was kind of an accident that happened, and it turned out to be a lot of fun. And I thought I would do it for a year or so as an experiment to see what would it be like if you opened your house up every night and you left your door unlocked most of the time, and you just left all your things out where people could see that you lived there.
Right.
What would happen? What would happen? It was an experiment, and it was interesting because nothing ever happened. You know, nothing bad ever happened. People, you know, when you treat people with respect and you trust them, they usually turn out to be trustworthy, and it worked out, you know, perfectly.
The Lower East Side was still kind of wild back then, right?
Oh yeah. All kinds of people wandered in the door. I mean, it was quite amazing.
Artists.
No, I'm talking about people from the street.
Oh, I know. But I think of you as a kind of pioneer, because in the wake of that, all sorts of storefront theaters and loft theaters and stuff popped up in the late '80s and the early '90s, and long about. Well, what was the year of the first New York International Fringe Festival?
97.
We did the first one in '97.
Yeah. By that time, the whole Lower East Side scene was blossoming with many, many theaters.
Yeah, it was. It was where all of us were producing at the time. We came down and joined Ellie, and you know, John thought of the idea probably in '95.
It was late '95, yeah.
When we were doing Americana Absurdum by Brian Parks.
In one of those storefront theaters in Totoconata on Ludlow. Yeah, and that was it Surf Reality, Collective Unconscious, House of Candles, and those were all just I guess like 2 blocks east of where Ellie had started. And went that way.
It's like a mini anti-Broadway.
It was certainly a little theater row.
It was.
But it was a storefront theater row, which was interesting.
Talk a little bit about the origins of the Fringe Festival. Like who's, you know, where did the idea come from and how?
Well, basically, we couldn't afford to get to Edinburgh. I mean, we were doing Americana Absurdum, and everyone's reaction that we talked to, we got a little bit of critical attention, and by that I mean a listing, you know, which at the time was,
the first year.
Oh my gosh, we got listed, you know.
And how many shows that first year?
The first festival was 175. It was supposed to be 100. Yeah, the original idea was we were going to do 100 shows in 10 venues. And then at some critical juncture, we said, that's not big enough, it's not going to get any attention.
Was it mostly New York folks or people from around the country?
Well, we called it the International Fringe Festival, so we were thrilled when a Canadian troupe came in the order. We were like, yes, that's international, that counts. Actually, that's not true. There was an Irish group that first year.
And that London group.
And that London.
I feel like I have Simon and Garfunkel back.
We actually feel like Simon and Garfunkel.
Hello, darkness, my old friend. But yeah, at some point we realized really the idea was not just another festival, but the impulse was a sort of a overload, intentional overload, so that it would be, and not so much for Uptown, but for us, for all these, all the shows, all the companies, that was a time, you know, you both remember the mid '90s, early '90s, where there was a feeling of resurgence. There was a feeling of lots of new work, lots of entrepreneurial spirits like Ellie, you know, who were saying, yeah, this is my little theater company. And I don't know if it's true for every, but it seems like most of the people who were starting venues and opening spaces were artists themselves. There was that, you know, it's what Kirk was talking about earlier, there was that independent theater spirit, that independent spirit, entrepreneurial.
And self-sufficient.
Self-sufficient. You know, there wasn't a division, and I guess there still isn't as much, but there wasn't a division like there is in other places between producer and artist.
Everyone's just a theater maker.
Like Kirk said, if you wanted to, you know, get your work produced in the way that it was intended, as the creator, you had to produce it yourself.
Make it happen.
You do it yourself, and there's a hardship to that, but there's a freedom to that, and there's eventually there becomes an aesthetic, which I also, excuse me, just going to clear my throat on your show, but it becomes an aesthetic. It becomes an aesthetic of I'm not auditioning for another show. This is the experience. This is the entire experience.
That's a good way to say it.
We should